Tony Curtis hired private investigators to follow his own wife. He tapped Janet Leigh's phone. He called her hotel room 12 times a night when she was filming, all while he was sleeping with half of Hollywood. But in his 1993 memoir, he painted himself as the victim. He claimed Janet betrayed him. He said she had secrets. Then Janet died in 2004, and Tony saw his chance. His next book revealed things about their bedroom that no one should have known. The timing wasn't an accident. Dead women can't sue for defamation. And Tony knew exactly what he was doing. Tony Curtis wasn't always Tony Curtis. He was born Bernard Schwartz, a poor kid from the Bronx who spoke only Hungarian until he was 6. His family shared a small room behind his father's tailor shop, and they barely had enough to eat. Life was loud, rough, and uncertain. His parents fought constantly about money, and anxiety filled the air every single day. At just 8 years old, things got even worse. His parents couldn't feed him and his younger brother Julius, so they sent both boys to an orphanage for a month. For a child, that kind of abandonment leaves a permanent scar. While there, they were bullied for being Jewish. It was a painful time. Bernard never forgot it. He learned young that if he wanted to survive, he could only rely on himself. Then came the worst moment of all. Just before his bar mitzvah, when he was 12, Julius was hit by a truck and killed. Bernard was crushed. Julius had been his protector and best friend, especially during their time in the orphanage. Now he was gone. Their mother was spiraling deeper into mental illness, often beating Bernard and his other brother, Robert. Eventually, Robert was diagnosed with the same schizophrenia. Curtis grew up in a home filled with violence, fear, and emotional chaos. He was the only one left standing, the only one not broken by it. After Julius died, Curtis found escape on the streets. He joined a local gang, not for crime, but for survival. He needed somewhere to belong. He became street smart, fast. Even then, he somehow knew his looks could save him. During fights, he protected his face. He didn't know how yet, but he felt his appearance might be his ticket out. A neighbor saw the path Curtis was heading down and stepped in. At age 11, he was sent to a Boy Scout camp. It changed everything. For the first time, he was around role models. He learned discipline, responsibility, teamwork. That single act of kindness may have saved his life. Without it, he later said, he probably would have ended up in jail. When World War II broke out, Curtis enlisted in the Navy after watching war films starring Cary Grant and Tyrone Power. He wanted adventure, real experience. He got it. He served on the USS Proteus for more than 2 years. On September 2, 1945, he stood on the deck and watched Japan surrender in Tokyo Bay. He was just a few hundred meters from history. During his service, he injured his leg and was discharged early. But the GI Bill gave him a chance. He used it to chase a dream that once seemed impossible, becoming an actor. He enrolled at the New School's dramatic workshop, training under famous directors and alongside soon-to-be stars like Walter Matthau and Harry Belafonte. He didn't just want fame, he wanted to escape the life he came from. Acting was his escape route. In 1948, at age 23, he arrived in Hollywood. Universal Studios saw something in him. They signed him immediately. But first, they stripped away his past. Bernard Schwartz was gone. They tried Jimmy Curtis, then Anthony Curtis, and finally Tony Curtis, a name with more sparkle. They gave him lessons, fencing, horseback riding, and shaped him into a star. It was a full transformation, not just of image, but identity. His first role was just 2 minutes long in Criss Cross, 1949. He was a dancer next to Yvonne De Carlo. No lines, No credit. But people noticed. Then came a few small roles: City Across the River, Johnny Stool Pigeon, and others. He was working hard, earning his place, building momentum. Then, in 1951, it happened. His first starring role in The Prince Who Was a Thief made him a sensation. Set in exotic Tangiers, it cast him as a charming rogue who turns out to be royalty. It was pure Hollywood fantasy, and Curtis nailed it. The film was shot in Technicolor to highlight his striking looks. Audiences couldn't get enough. Overnight, he became a heartthrob. There was a quote supposedly from that film, "Yondu lies de castle of my fader," that became a running joke, though Curtis never actually said it. Still, it helped build the myth around him. He didn't mind. Fame was fame, and this film proved he could carry it. Universal didn't stop there. They paired him with Piper Laurie and Rock Hudson as part of a trio of rising stars. Critics weren't impressed with their early work, but Universal knew what it was doing. The studio controlled every move. They organized public dates with starlets, built stories around their lives, even claimed Laurie bathed in milk. It was all image, all marketing, and it worked. Curtis was painted as the blue-collar dream, the tough kid who made it big. Hudson was the polished one. Laurie was the mysterious beauty. Together, they gave Universal a fresh generation of stars to rival MGM and Paramount. For Curtis, it was everything he had fought for. It was 1950, and Hollywood was glowing. Movie stars were gods, and studios controlled everything. That's when Tony Curtis met Janet Leigh. He was a rising star. She was already a well-known MGM actress, discovered by Norma Shearer, one of the biggest names of the 1930s. Norma had spotted a photo of Janet when she was just a ski lodge receptionist. That one photo changed her life. With Norma's backing, Janet became a star. And now, here she was, meeting Tony, who was fast becoming the face of a new kind of acting, raw, emotional, and modern. When they met, it wasn't just two actors talking. It felt like the studio system itself was shifting. She was old-school elegance. He was the future. And something clicked. A year later, on June 4th, 1951, they got married. But this wasn't just a wedding. It was a rebellion. Tony was signed with Universal. Janet was tied to MGM. Both studios had strict rules. Big stars were told to stay single, to keep fans dreaming. A wedding could ruin that fantasy. It could hurt profits. But they didn't care. They wanted each other more than fame. So they tied the knot in a quiet ceremony in Greenwich, Connecticut. It wasn't flashy. There were no crowds or headlines that day, but behind the scenes, studio executives were furious. Back then, studios controlled everything, from names to who their stars could date. Tony and Janet pushed back, and for a moment, love beat the system. The public didn't turn away. In fact, they loved it. Soon, the Hollywood Women's Press Club awarded Tony and Janet the Golden Apple Award. It was given to the most cooperative stars, actors who were kind to the press, easy to work with, and respected by crews. Most Hollywood couples were known for drama, tantrums, and public fights, but not Tony and Janet. They worked well together. They were polite, honest, and professional. Producers and directors noticed. Everyone wanted to work with them, and this award didn't just boost their image, it helped their careers. Being seen as reliable meant more scripts, bigger budgets, and steady fame. And they used that fame well. Between 1953 and 1960, they made 5 films together. Their first big hit was Houdini in 1953. Tony played the legendary escape artist. Janet played his wife. Audiences loved their chemistry. The film showed that Tony wasn't just a pretty face, he could act. And Janet, already famous, proved she could do intense drama. In 1958, they starred in The Vikings. It was massive. Shot in Norway, it had a $3.5 million budget, huge at the time. The action scenes were brutal. They both did their own stunts. The film was a hit. In 1960, they made their last film together, Who Was That Lady? It was a comedy, fast, witty, and fun. The public couldn't get enough. Each movie they made together made more money than the average film that year. Studios loved the profits. Audiences loved the couple. Then came something even bigger: their children. On June 17, 1956, Kelly Lee Curtis was born. The media went wild. It was the first time two major movie stars had a baby at the peak of their fame. Magazines called them the perfect family. Photos of Kelly with her famous parents were everywhere. Life magazine. Look, every cover told the same story: Hollywood royalty. Then, on November 22, 1958, Jamie Lee Curtis was born. More cameras, more headlines. It wasn't just about acting anymore. The public was now obsessed with their personal life. Tony, Janet, Kelly, and Jamie were photographed at premieres, vacations, and charity events. For the first time, the private lives of stars were as important as their movies. Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh were once Hollywood's golden couple. But behind the glamour, their marriage was falling apart. From the start, Tony struggled with deep insecurities. He loved Janet, but he didn't trust her. And that mistrust slowly turned into obsession. Even when Janet was working on set, Tony couldn't relax. He would call her hotel room over and over, sometimes more than a dozen times in one night. He claimed it was love, but it felt more like control. He wanted to know where she was at all times, what she was doing, and who she was with. All this while Tony himself was having affairs with Hollywood stars like Marilyn Monroe and Gloria DeHaven. It wasn't just phone calls. When Janet was filming The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra, Tony became convinced she was having an affair. He hired a private investigator to follow her for the entire shoot. The investigator found nothing. Still, Tony refused to believe it. He was fixated on Sinatra. No matter how much evidence showed otherwise, he couldn't shake the belief that something was going on. Tony's paranoia wasn't just limited to co-stars. Billionaire Howard Hughes had an obsession with Janet, too. He sent her gifts, tapped her phone, and followed her using private detectives. Janet said Hughes was always polite, but his presence made her feel uneasy. For Tony, it was terrifying. He admitted in his memoir that he feared Hughes might have him killed. And in Hollywood, that didn't sound impossible. Hughes had the money and power to destroy lives. But Tony's jealousy didn't start after they got married. Even before the wedding, he would wait outside Janet's house when she was out on dates with other men. He'd sit in his car for hours, watching, waiting. He wasn't her husband yet, not even her boyfriend. But he acted like she belonged to him. That possessiveness never went away. It only got worse with time. One moment revealed just how insecure Tony really was. Early in their relationship, he decided to test Janet's loyalty. He was known for doing a great impression of Cary Grant, so he called Janet pretending to be Grant and asked her out. Janet saw through it immediately. She played along and politely said no. She already had plans with Tony Curtis. It was a clever response, but the whole thing showed how little Tony trusted her, even back then. Things took a darker turn in 1955. Tony found a letter hidden in their Beverly Hills home. It wasn't in Janet's handwriting. It was personal. He was sure it came from Bob Fosse, the choreographer she had been working with. The letter shattered Tony's fragile trust. Whether or not it meant anything, Tony couldn't let it go. That piece of paper became a symbol of betrayal in his mind. For him, it changed everything. The fight that followed shook their entire neighborhood. Neighbors could hear the screaming through the walls. It wasn't just about the letter. It was about years of tension, jealousy, and resentment. Tony was furious about Janet's rising fame. Janet was tired of his immaturity. The pressure of pretending to be a perfect couple had finally exploded. Their house wasn't a home anymore. It was a war zone. Janet denied everything. She said there was no affair. But Tony didn't believe her. He never trusted her again. From that moment, their marriage became a performance. In public, they smiled. In private, they were falling apart. Tony hired more private investigators. He even tapped her phone. Their daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, would later say her father's jealousy poisoned the whole family. After that fight, Tony felt like he didn't have to pretend anymore. He used the letter as an excuse to stop feeling guilty. He said if Janet could cheat, so could he. Whether or not she did, Tony started sleeping around openly. He chased women while still pretending to be happily married. While married to Janet Leigh, Curtis openly admitted to sleeping with Marilyn Monroe and Natalie Wood. He even said he was in love with Gloria DeHaven, another co-star, while still married. Years later, he declared Gloria was the true love of his life, while sitting next to his sixth wife, who was 46 years younger. His affair with Marilyn Monroe actually started in 1950, long before she became the icon everyone knows. She was still Norma Jean, a redhead with a ponytail. They reconnected during the filming of Some Like It Hot in 1958. By then, Monroe was married to Arthur Miller, and Curtis was still with Leigh. Things escalated quickly. According to Curtis, Monroe got pregnant during the affair, but she miscarried just weeks later. Arthur Miller didn't believe the baby was Curtis's and asked Monroe's doctor for proof. The emotional fallout ended the affair as suddenly as it had restarted. Curtis also had a short but intense relationship with Natalie Wood. Some sources say it ended with a tragic miscarriage. Still, Curtis didn't seem to slow down. He spent many nights at the Playboy Mansion, where he claimed women with fantastic figures threw themselves at him. He described it as a bounty that no man could resist. He thought he was simply doing what any man in his prime would do. But while he cheated repeatedly, he was obsessed with the idea that Leigh might be cheating on him. He became jealous, suspicious, and resentful, a textbook case of projection. Despite being the one who broke the vows, he blamed others for betrayal. He painted himself as the victim. In interviews and his memoirs, he made it clear that he didn't see any contradiction. He excused his affairs by saying fame made temptation impossible to resist. He was 30, famous, and irresistible, so he acted like rules didn't apply to him. But he expected complete loyalty from his wives. That double standard followed him his whole life. The most shocking story came from 1961. Curtis was 36 years old when he began filming Taras Bulba in Argentina. His co-star was Christine Kaufmann, a German-Austrian actress who was only 17. Their chemistry on set quickly turned into a full-blown relationship. At the time, Curtis was still married to Janet Leigh. The scandal exploded when Leigh visited the set unannounced. She saw their closeness and reportedly became physically ill. It was the breaking point for their already strained marriage. The situation wasn't just morally questionable, it was legally dangerous. In many places, their relationship would have been considered statutory rape. In California, where Curtis lived, the legal age of consent was 18. If their relationship had gone public in the U.S. before Christine's birthday, Curtis could have faced criminal charges. The studio panicked. They tried to keep everything secret to avoid lawsuits and bad press. Taras Bulba had a $6 million budget, a huge amount at the time, and the scandal threatened to destroy it. Curtis and Kaufman waited until her 18th birthday to live together openly in the U.S. Until then, they stayed in Europe where the laws were looser and the press wasn't as aggressive. He divorced Leigh in September 1962 and married Kaufman the next year. They had 2 daughters, Alexandra in 1964 and Allegra in 1966. But the marriage only lasted until 1968. The affair didn't just end his marriage to Leigh, it also destroyed the clean image that had helped make him a star. Curtis's career began to slip, and his reputation never fully recovered. Through all of this, Curtis never really changed. In a 2008 interview, he told the world that Gloria DeHaven, not any of his 6 wives, was the true love of his life. It didn't seem to matter that he was married at the time. He spoke as if his emotions were all that counted. That mindset, one where his desires came before loyalty, family, or consequences, defined his entire life. He chased passion, ignored rules, and believed fame gave him a free pass. Curtis once said, "I decided that from that point on, I would partake more fully of the bounty being offered me." That line summed up everything. He saw love and sex as rewards, not responsibilities. He never saw his hypocrisy, only his appetite. The same charm that won him roles in Hollywood also helped him escape blame. But behind the movie, Magic was a man who hurt those closest to him and never fully admitted it. Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh were once one of Hollywood's golden couples. But by September 1962, their picture-perfect image shattered. The divorce became final on September 14, 1962, in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Janet was still filming The Manchurian Candidate when it happened. What stunned everyone wasn't just the breakup, it was what came next. The very next day, Janet married stockbroker Robert Brandt in a quiet Las Vegas ceremony at the Sands Hotel. Dean Martin and his wife were the witnesses. People were shocked. Rumors spread fast. Many believed she had been seeing Brandt before the divorce was even official. Janet denied it, blaming the split on outside problems, including the death of Tony's father. But her sudden marriage made headlines. Gossip columns couldn't stop talking about it. Some wondered how this would affect their 2 daughters, Kelly and Jamie Leigh. The way Janet moved on, so fast and so quietly, was the opposite of what happened to Tony. Janet's life moved forward with strength and success. Just 2 years before the divorce, she had stunned audiences with her role as Marion Crane in Psycho, 1960. That 45-second shower scene became legendary. It won her a Golden Globe and earned her an Oscar nomination. She didn't slow down. In 1962, she starred in The Manchurian Candidate, one of the decade's most powerful political thrillers. She proved she wasn't just a pretty face. She could take on bold, complex roles. She followed it with Bye Bye Birdie in 1963 and Harper in 1966. Audiences and directors saw her as a serious actress. And beyond the screen, she made time for causes that mattered, even serving on the President's Council for the Peace Corps. Her career was thriving. Tony Curtis, on the other hand, struggled after the divorce. He was once one of Hollywood's brightest stars, but the years that followed were filled with problems. While Janet kept rising, Tony's career became tangled in scandal, addiction, and fading fame. It wasn't just his work that suffered, his role as a father did too. The real impact of their divorce showed up in the lives of their daughters. Kelly and Jamie Leigh were caught in a storm of custody changes, step-parents, and long absences. Jamie Leigh once said she was the product of 13 divorces in her family. That kind of chaos left its mark. She admitted it took years to learn what a stable relationship even looked like. Growing up famous didn't make things easier. It made them more confusing and lonely. Her father, Tony, wasn't around much. Their relationship was distant, and things got worse after his death. Tony Curtis didn't just write a book. He dropped a bomb on Hollywood. In 1993, his autobiography came out, almost a decade after his ex-wife Janet Leigh had published her own story. Janet's book had been calm, graceful, and full of fond memories. She skipped the scandals and kept things classy. She never bad-mouthed Tony, but when Tony told his version, he went straight for the jugular. He didn't hold back. He talked about affairs, drugs, and the ugly parts of fame. It was raw, messy, and nothing like Janet's polished story. People didn't know what hit them. Suddenly, the Hollywood silence was gone, and Tony had kicked the door wide open. Some loved it. The Library Journal called it frank and absorbing. They praised how he opened up about growing up poor in New York and fighting his way to stardom. But not everyone was impressed. Publishers Weekly tore into him. They said he blamed everyone but himself. His parents, his wives, even Hollywood itself. Everyone was at fault but Tony. His charm was there, sure, but so was his ego. That rubbed a lot of readers the wrong way. Still, it was impossible to look away. He talked about being married 6 times. He talked about his addiction and time at the Betty Ford Center. He confessed to affairs, many of them. One of the most shocking claims? He said Marilyn Monroe got pregnant with his child while filming Some Like It Hot in 1958. According to him, she had a miscarriage and no one ever knew. It was the kind of thing that made headlines. People were stunned. Even more so because Monroe and her husband Arthur Miller were still together at the time. But she was gone. So was Miller. No one could confirm or deny it. It became another Hollywood mystery, now with Tony's name all over it. Readers weren't sure how to feel. On one hand, he had a brutal childhood. He was the son of Hungarian Jewish immigrants. He didn't even speak English until he was 5. He grew up dirt poor. That part of his story was moving. But then he'd brag about sleeping with Natalie Wood, about being irresistible to women, about his talent. For every moment of vulnerability, there was another of pure ego. It felt like he couldn't decide if he wanted to be pitied or praised. When he published American Prince in 2008, the gloves really came off. Janet Leigh had passed away in 2004. That meant Tony could say whatever he wanted about their marriage, and no one could challenge him. He accused her of cheating, even though he had no proof. He admitted to obsessively calling her, worried she was with Frank Sinatra. He made himself the victim of jealousy and fear, all while painting Janet as distant and possibly unfaithful. His version of their love story was twisted by suspicion. And with Janet gone, his word became the final say. But the book wasn't just about his marriage. He threw punches at everyone. He said Jerry Lewis had a big ego. He mocked Danny Kaye. He gave backhanded compliments to Frank Sinatra and Laurence Olivier. And he didn't shy away from the details of his wild sex life. He called himself a Hollywood Lothario and seemed proud of it. Affairs with Monroe, Wood, and others, he laid it all out. The tone was bold, even reckless. At times, it felt like he was confessing. At others, like he was bragging. One of the boldest claims came when he described meeting Monroe back in 1950. He said they had an affair then and rekindled it in 1958. That's when she got pregnant, he claimed. He remembered the moment she told Miller. The room was so silent I could hear tires screeching on Santa Monica Boulevard, he wrote. It was dramatic, theatrical, and entirely unprovable. But it got people talking and kept his book on the shelves. Reactions were split. Some readers said the book was wild fun until it wasn't. One Amazon review said it was like a cake that looked great in the oven, then collapsed. It started strong but turned bitter. Readers got tired of the constant name-dropping and blaming. They wanted more insight into his acting, less about his conquests. But others enjoyed the gossip. It felt like reading someone's private diary, with no filter. The final twist came after Tony died in 2010. His will shocked everyone. He had a fortune worth $60 million and left all of it to his sixth wife, Jill Vandenberg. Not a single dollar to his children, not even to Jamie Lee Curtis. He had rewritten the will just months before his death. He listed each child and made it clear they were getting nothing. One daughter sued, claiming fraud, but the will held up in court. People suspected Jill had influenced him. Others believed Tony did it out of spite. Either way, it was a bitter end.